All right, so let's just move on now to one of our top stories and the stories, important stories of the day that we had been tracking for you here on SA Today, as we reported earlier that tributes are pouring in for the late anti-apartheid lawyer and activist Paul David. He died of natural causes at his home in Stanger, north of Durban, at the age of 79. David's political activism began with the Natal Indian Congress. But for more on this now, we speak to a family friend, Ela Gandhi, who joins us now live via Skype. Good afternoon to you, ma'am, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us here on the SABC News channel.
Thank you. And good evening to everybody.
All right, thank you so much. But firstly, our condolences to yourself as a family friend and the family in general. But for the younger generation who may not be familiar with Paul David, who is Paul David and what has his contribution been to the struggle?
Well, Paul David was he was a lawyer. He was a person who did a lot for the community. From his early days, they used to work, in the interest of people. So he has been a member of the Durban Housing Action Committee, the Verulam Housing Action Committee, gave legal services free to many people. People will remember him for his assistance over the years. And then he also participated in politics through his legal fraternity, through the Natal Indian Congress, and through a number of different, organizations to which he belonged, and where he worked against the apartheid government. So when, for instance, many of the people were fighting against the provisions that the government had brought in to have the tricameral system on the one hand, the Bantustan system on the other hand, and to woo the colored and Indian communities through offering such, positions in parliament, separate parliament. Paul David was one of the people who stood up, to fight against that, and the anti-South African, tricameral parliament or no vote campaign during that time. He was in the forefront of all those movements. And because of his activities, he was also detained many a times. And he was one of the 6 people who had occupied the British Consulate in Durban and had sat there for nearly, I think it was almost just over 6 months that they sat in the British Consulate under terrible conditions, but they sat there because of the oppressive conditions of that time. There was an act that made it possible for the government not only to detain people, but also to prohibit people from, communicating with others, from, any human rights or freedoms. And therefore, they opposed that particular section of the Act. And because of their sit-in in the consulate, that particular section was amended. But as soon as they came out, they were rearrested and then locked up, and a case was brought against them And Paul David was one of the people, but amongst them were many others like Frank Chikane, Aubrey, I think it was, he was from the Release Mandela Committee, and many others were arrested and tried for treason, but then found not guilty after long imprisonment and after the case was heard.
All right, so
in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah.
Paul David was one of those people who stood up for the people and for justice.
So how will he be remembered? And what is that one thing that we need to take from his life?
I think he led a very simple life throughout. He was one of those people who really led the life of a person who didn't look at other people in terms of race, color, class, nothing like that. He had no hang-ups like that. Everyone was an individual, and he accepted them for who they were, and not because they belonged to a particular race group or a particular class. And I think that was a quality that, he had and his children have. And you can see that he was one of those people in South Africa who truly represented a non-racial image and also very upright image. He was totally against any kind of corruption, and he stood up and spoke out against corruption.
All right.
I think that is an important lesson for today.
All right. No, that's where we'll leave it for now. We thank you so much for coming through. Do you know anything of the funeral details as yet?
He wanted a very quiet funeral, and he wanted a cremation. So I believe that they are going to cremate him tomorrow. Only the family is going to be there. Other details are, the family, and there's Maggie Govender and Yusuf Vauda, who have been selected to look into what other, details they might be for memorial service or anything else.
All right, ma'am, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming through. Ela Gandhi is a family friend to the late lawyer, anti-apartheid lawyer and activist Paul David, who died today at the age of 79. And according to Ela Gandhi there, he may be cremated tomorrow. She was talking to us about his life and times. A quick ad break.